the southern part, South Africa, to be specific, Eswatini. Eswatini is within South Africa. Yes. How that works, only them can explain, right? Yes. But the proverb today is the antelope that is constantly moving will fall in a pit. The antelope that is constantly moving will fall in a pit. What do you make of that?
Well, that's a very interesting kind of statement because it means if you move aimlessly without considering the terrain, you are likely to get into trouble in one way or the other. Because, of course, given the landscape of Botswana, it's expansive and it is full of hostilities to many animals, especially an animal like an antelope. So if it keeps on moving without checking the radar, it's likely to get into trouble, either into some kind of pit or it's likely to be eaten by other animals, especially the, what do you call them? The predators.
Predators.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. And it's interesting that we talk about the likely to be eaten by predators. It could be akin to a lot of the political staging that we see happening in the country at the moment. Oftentimes we tell ourselves, Waziri, that we should stay away from the politics of things and focus on the development of things, focus on the everyday things that are happening in a way to try and make the country better. Unfortunately, what grabs the stage is the politics of things, because there are many individuals over and over again who want to state or stake their claim to be part of leadership that would eventually lead towards this development that everybody keeps talking about. Now, when that happens, we often see that there are cocoons that form. Those cocoons, people will today call them political parties. People will call them other things. People will call them movements. People will call them coalitions. Even on a grander scale, broad-based government. And those things are happening as we see them today. Just the other day, it would appear as though you've thrown your support behind one of these entities as well. And we wanted to pick at that a little bit and see then where you were and what essentially you're bringing towards this particular grouping.
Well, it's very interesting that in Africa, there is poverty of political parties that qualify in the true sense of the word. I've had the privilege of doing research in one of my papers about political parties in Africa. And I realized apart from one or two countries, such as Tanzania, despite the fact that they don't seem to be doing very well in the democratic phase, but in terms of political movement, CCM has survived the times, because a political party that is able to transit from one or two leadership positions and get into the fifth or the sixth position of a leader who comes from a different region from the original leader of that particular country qualifies to be political party in the parameters that I was able to identify. The other country is South Africa. Despite the challenges that ANC is faced today with, it is one of the political entities that has lived beyond Mandela. And the third country that has some semblance of a political party system is the country that we've just gotten the issue of the antelope, that's Botswana. But Botswana is unique in a way that they believe in some kind of chieftaincy. Remember, even the first president, Seretse Khama, was supposed to have been a chief until he married a Mzungu wife, and therefore he was almost defrocked from that position. But of course, he scaled up the leadership to the national level and became the president of that country. But organically in that country, it is done alongside some kind of chieftaincy, such that the current president, to get into a coalition with a number of other entities, including the party of Ian Khama, for him to be able to beat his former boss, President Masisi. That is how the current president of Botswana was able to win in the last election. So, but by large, parties, especially in Kenya, are either grafted around an individual or around a coalition of tribes, such that for the last 25 years, without any fear of contradiction, no entity, formation, coalition has formed itself and fought over 2 elections. Remember, it was NAC, then it went to PNU. From PNU, it was TNA and URP. From that, it was Jubilee. From Jubilee, now it became Kenya. It is Kenya Kwanza. Likewise, in the opposition, it has been facing the same configuration, where we are talking about NASA at some stage, we are talking about Azimio in the last election in the opposition. So, in a way, we are yet to form organic political parties that, despite the changes in leadership, it does not change the kind of configuration as a political entity. To get back to what you've just said, yes, I left Kenya Kwanza on the eve of the last general election, 2022.
Yes.
I moved to Azimio and have remained so in the opposition. And therefore, any formation of an entity that seems to be opposed to the politics of Kenya Kwanza seems to have a home in my heart. And therefore, the people in the opposition today, whether it is the Honorable Kalonzo, the Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, the Honorable Eugene Wamalwa, the Honorable Martha Karua, and many other people, including the latest of our colleagues, the Honorable Fred Matiang'i. These are people we are trying to navigate the landscape of this country with the hope that we will do 2 things. 1, provide effective leadership that is based on serious political institutions without making it look like it is an issue of an individual. 2, we are trying to form an entity that whoever is chosen as a presidential candidate or a team that is going to be given a chance to lead this country is just the first among equals. So that we leave this issue where somebody thinks is the best and therefore anybody else does not mean anything. The second issue, which I feel is very critical, we must also be willing to accept that every generation has its own set of leaders. I became a member of parliament at the age of 31, and that is about 37 years ago. This therefore means there are many people who are half or less than half my age who qualify to be members of parliament in the constituency that I represented about 20 years ago. Why am I saying so? In the history of East Africa, Mwalimu Nyerere at the age of 63 was able to do, and in the process, he imported a word into Kiswahili called kungatuka. At the age of 63, when he was forming his last cabinet, he said of necessity, half of the cabinet must be under 40. This included his own Prime Minister, the late Edward Muringe Sokoine. This therefore means that a particular example by Nyerere, and he just didn't say he wanted just young people. He said, I want young people who understand the dynamics of this country. But the people I've been with for the last 24 years, we have the same thinking, and we are likely not to infuse into the potty of the country if I have to hand over to somebody my age or slightly younger than me. So that's the way I look at politics in Kenya today, and we must have the courage.
You mentioned the aspirations of Mzee Nyerere and his aspirations of the young people being included in the leadership of Tanzania. And we look at the country and where we find ourselves today. The Gen Z that is spoken about every other day are pushing to have a seat on the table. Now, one would want to ask, how is the formation that you are in moving things around to ensure that the Gen Z is not just a political vehicle or a card that is there to be given handouts, but that they are part and process of leadership in the country?
Well, the way I look at society and any formation of leadership must be a reflection of society in a way that the way society is, those of my age and above, we are only 3% of the population of Kenya today. a majority of people are people under 50. And of course, those who are in management positions could be, let's say, between 30 and 50. And this therefore means in whatever we do, and I'm not the spokesperson for the coalition, but I'm just giving my own opinion as Kirwa. The way I just believe is whoever is chosen as a presidential candidate, whether he is above 50 or below 50, must of necessity realize that for this country to make progress, we must create a clear transitional vehicle that will allow young people increasingly to be part of the decision making. And it should not just be decision making. It should be informed decision making in the sense that whoever is given a chance to run a particular department of government must be somebody with the requisite capacity, with the necessary education background, and also with the opportunity to be given a chance to be at the bargaining table. I remember in 2002, we were 8 members of the summit, led by President Kibaki, and I was one of them. I was much younger than most of the other members, and I had a lighter constituency in terms of the votes I brought to the table were not as many as those votes were to be brought by the late Amalwa, Mheshimiwa Ngilu, Mheshimiwa Saitoti, Mheshimiwa Kalonzo Musyoka, or Mheshimiwa Raila, or Kibaki himself. But they gave me that opportunity as part of the national mosaic, that yes, be here. And I want to urge young people, when you are given an opportunity, please realize it is not because you are so important, but you identify with certain aspirations. I'm disappointed by some of the young people. During the demonstration about Gen Z, they were the forefront. But now they are falling into being party supporters, and individuals, we realize their threshold was so low that when they were given that opportunity, it got into their heads. And they thought they were so important, they did not realize the aspirations they were identifying with were important, but not themselves as individuals. That is the quagmire that I find myself in. Yes, how young? And how do we infuse in them the fact that when you are given an opportunity, you are just a facilitator of a bigger issue than yourself? I will just remind you that President Kenyatta was over 70 when he took over the reins of power in this country. But his cabinet still remains the youngest. The youngest in the sense that he had people who are as young as 29, the late Dr. Sakari Onyonka. He had people at the age of 32, Daniel Musyoka Mutinda from Kitui. He had people who are PSS at the age of 25, the late David Mwiraria. People, the late Stanley Njindo Matiba. So Kenyatta understood, yes, I may be 80, I may be 70-something, but this country, majority of them are younger people. That's why he had one of the youngest cabinet that has ever been formed in Kenya. Today, let anybody challenge me. Apart from people like Mbiu Koinange, who was the minister in state of in the office of the president, the late Jackson Harvester Ngaine, many of them were people below 50, including the Attorney General at that particular time, the late Charles Njonjo.
The understanding from all of this comes that that the will in the hearts of those who put themselves up for leadership is actually for a better nation and is actually for the uplifting of the livelihoods of its people. That is what the assumption is. Sadly and unfortunately, we see as things have moved over time that it is not the interest of the people that fuels the activation of going to seek a place in leadership. It's not. Unfortunately, it's usually for political and personal expediency. How do people then resonate with choosing a leader whose intent really is not for you as a people? They have cross purposes completely.
Well, at times when before people get into politics, they hate politicians. And when they get into politics, they become worse than the politicians who preceded them. The issue is that it is a reflection of our society. What I think we need to do as a country is to do what I consider as social reengineering of our nation. To be able to infuse into the minds of Kenyans a certain way of respecting institutions. Whatever has happened, especially in the current regime, the president from the beginning of time, he emasculated political parties. He emasculated parliament, both the National Assembly and the Senate. He destroyed the confidence that we had in judiciary by ensuring that all issues are done not according to the law, but according to the whims of the executive. And even within the executive, he has destroyed the structure of executive. Because the structure of executive must also have its own internal communication where there are checks and balances. Look at the issue of the seal that we've been grappling with. Even if, let's assume the seal had not moved, although I was very keen to listen to the Attorney General, the current Attorney General, the word she used is that legally the seal has not moved from our office. So for those of us who had good English teachers in high school, she was very clear. It may not have moved legally, but physically the seal might have moved. Because legal and actual are two different things. You remember the issue of de jure and de jure and de facto? So de jure, the seal may still be with the office of the Attorney General, but de facto, the seal might have moved from the office of the Attorney General. And when such internal communication fails, then that is destruction of the institution of the executive by somebody who believes that he is the only one who knows everything, even in fields that he has not been trained in.
Currently, we know all the problems and the issues that are going on in the country, and some of what you've just talked about, respecting the institutions and all that. The main issue here and the conversation, and maybe my question is, how then do we move forward, is you look at the political party configuration that you referred to and how they've morphed from the original parties. Is it a case of you're just changing vehicles, but it's the same person? And I'm saying this because I'm Dennis Okari. I'm the same person today. My leadership style, my ideology, my faith, my belief system, my vision will not necessarily change tomorrow because I've changed my clothes. What we seem to see today with all these current realignments is it is the same people, just changing vehicles. We're not seeing anything really fresh. How then do we move from the culture of moving configurations to actually having a conversation around what this country needs, a reset, like you referred? How do we do it?
Well, I refer to as I was talking about social re-engineering of the nation. It means also the public must of necessity rise to the occasion. When you hear of issues like corruption, the public is part of corruption network, in the sense that when you go to the constituency tomorrow and you want to run in a certain constituency from where you come, you are likely to be asked to pay certain services, certain rent for that space to be given to you, for somebody to listen to you. And that is the money that we give in every election. And at times people spend, as a member of parliament, somebody spends close to 50 million. And yet we know the salaries and allowances and the cost of being in that office for 5 years is likely to be, and the benefits accrued is likely to be smaller than that. But then why do people get into those positions? For example, a member of parliament. Today, a member of parliament has been enticed by what we call NGCDF, which is money that is meant for the public, but now the member of parliament is refusing with it because he wants to be the person doling out contracts to various individuals. And yet also the public seems to be supporting that particular position. So my take is that, yes, we cannot make over overnight, but we need to consciously understand the beginning point is for us to get a leader who will respect other leaders. That's why I was saying we are not looking for an individual who is coming from outer space. We are looking for an individual who will accept that is just first among the equals. That's why I was telling you, I was sitting at the same table with the Honorable Kibaki, and we did not have the same weight. If we were to be sitting in a seesaw, the weight would be overwhelming in favor of Kibaki. But they accepted that, yes, you are sitting among us, and we respect you, and my opinion was carry the day. Today, if we wanted to make change, we would need to infuse into our system younger people, and the people who will also accept that corruption is anathema. Otherwise, we see some of the people, the other day, we know the prices of these vehicles. They did not have a vehicle, now they have vehicles. They are moving as if they have been on this space for so long. Then you ask yourself, where did this person get the money to buy the kind of vehicle he's using? When some of these vehicles, they go between 11 and 18 million. Are these the change makers that we expect to change our society? The answer for me is no. But so to be young does not mean you are less corrupt.
I mean, I just want to segue from the question that Dennis asked, because the thing is that what we do see is that we see people today who are offering themselves up or to be part of coalitions that have been in the political arena for the last 30 years. That's the truth.
Yes,
and that over those 30 years, if we were to ask the significant change that has been made, we may see a few things here and there, but we have the people who were stirring the pot in 1990, still stirring the pot in 2025. Can we truly get a different thing coming out of the kitchen?
I'm one of them, so
yes,
I'm not being defensive, and that's why I was very clear that if I was to be, I'm not going to overstay my invitation. But the circumstances have changed. 1990, that is the wall. That is when the Berlin Wall collapsed.
Yes,
and that is when now democracy came back to town. And some of the individuals who have been here, they did not have the opportunity to serve at that particular level. Remember, President Kibaki was vice president for 12 years, and many people would have written him off. But for the period he served us, he was able to do a lot of transformation. I'm not saying if you cannot perform at this level, you will perform better when you go up. Because at times, in those of us who have done a bit of human resource and industrial psychology, we know at times you can move up to the extent that you become incompetent. And there are some of the people even leading the country today. If they left the stage last year or before they became what they are today, possibly people would have yearned for them to be in political leadership. But now, society has promoted them to a level of incompetency. And this therefore means, yes, it's not about age, it's not about longevity, it's about what is your paradigm. Are you changing? For me, I'm willing to change, to hand over to young generation. But that handover must also be within the basic tenets of the law and the basic tenets and practices of society. That's why in the run-up to GNZ demonstration, my main worry was, when you evict the president from State House, what is the alternative method of doing it? But now, God is giving us 2027 for us to decide whether the current CEO of the country is going to be retained or is going to be changed.
Yeah.
And when you change, you must ask yourself, am I changing for a better person or a better team of people, or am I changing for the sake of change?
There's a question still on this political party configuration. There was a picture that was taken off now for those who are opposing this current regime. And somebody raised a question that there is no single young person or a fresh face that you can say, maybe let's listen to this person. It's the same old people. My question is this. Who eats at the table? You were at the table with Kibaki and you accorded that opportunity, and you said you didn't have the kind of weight that would have given you that opportunity. However, looking at the current political structure, it almost feels like when you're coming to the table, you must come with a voting basket. Must come with a block or your community. Beyond that, there is also funds. A lot of these young people don't have access to resources, can't even access loans because they have no securities.
Right.
So you have somebody who wants to get into leadership. They have a vision, but will they honestly find space in the current political setup to say, hey, I may not have the money, I don't have the voting block at the moment, but this is my vision? Will they have that space?
Well, that's a very good question. Good question in the sense that I'm of the same school. But at times, if you are not given that opportunity, you may not be able to leverage on the space that you've been given, however limited it is. Now, my take is that what we're planning in our corner of the Republic is to be able to have a number of organs within the totality of the coalition, where there is an opportunity for young people not to be told what to do, but to be able to have an input in the kind of change that we envisage for this country. So that they create their own agenda, and that agenda is taken to be part and parcel of the totality of the leadership of the People's Coalition that we are now trying to form. In that way, we'll be able to respect their thinking because they live under different circumstances. When I was in high school, there were no mobile phones. When I was in high school, there was no, in fact, it came towards the tail end of my high school, what we call fax machine, which almost became some kind of earthquake, to the extent that the head of state at that particular time were wondering why fax machines were allowed in government offices. So, but today, fax machine is not a very complicated issue. Almost it's getting obsolete. So what am I saying? We want the young people to create their own agenda and to be part of a team. They cannot isolate themselves and expect to do a makeover of this society without the support of all other people within this space called Kenya.
When you talk about support that the young people need and require, as rightfully put by yourself and Dennis, there is the aspect of the promise that has been given over time. If you remember the current administration and the promise they gave to the young people, you will be part of this government, you'll be part of this conversation. But the moment the leadership took over now, we start seeing the question that Dennis is raising. You need to come in with your people, because that then poses a conversation around shares. And this is, and I'm headed that way. And you see now the people that we're talking about shares is the group of individuals who have formed this coalition, who are now the opposition. And one would want to ask, the trust deficit has gone. How do we repair that such that Kenyans will look at this coalition and say, finally we're being seen, we're being heard, we are there to make decisions? The trust is gone. How do we fix that?
Well, it's unfortunate that one individual is responsible for depriving the Kenyan people trust on their own leaders. My take is that we are not going to bring some kind of magic. What we need to do is that we are not giving them support. We're giving them opportunity or a platform. On that particular platform, they generate the agenda of the young people of this country. And that agenda must of necessity incorporate the basic challenges that we have about leadership in Kenya, including the issue of trust deficit. The second issue is also they must manage their egos, because there are only two problems in Kenya today among politicians. Is trust deficit from the public and also their own ego trip. If any coalition does not work, it's not because those people have any hate against each other. It will be because of ego trip. Because politicians must manage their own egos. Whatever separates ordinary Kenyans from politicians is ego trip.
Right.
And that ego trip, unless it is managed, it is likely to destroy even the best of coalitions. So my take is that we are creating a platform. And when you create a platform, then everybody qualifies to get to that platform and generate genuine and organic thinking process that will assist this country to move from what it is today. And that thinking process must of necessity ensure that we build institutions and respect presence of those institutions. You can have institutions, but you destroy them. And this is what I said at the beginning of the term of the current president.
Let's take a break at this point and then come back and continue with this conversation. We're looking at, all right, so is Kenya at a crossroads or is it at a dead end when it comes to then what it's looking for leadership, looking for governance? Former Agriculture Minister Kipruto Arap Kiro is our guest this hour. We're looking into that. We'll be back at 21 minutes to 10.
This is the Situation Room.
Kenya thrives on agriculture and it's very fruitful. From the highlands that we grow our coffee and tea all the way to the resilient northeastern part with our livestock, and not forgetting the breadbasket in the Rift Valley.
If you're not able to meet an agronomist, you can even view channels whereby you can start from the bottom.
Maisha ya siku hizi ni kujituma. Hakuna haja kwenda kutafuta kazi na kazi yenyewe iko hapa kwa mchanga.
At Farm Kenya, we celebrate those who make it happen. Farmers who innovate, adapt, and guess what? They're able to feed the nation. Together, we are growing nutrition.
Together, we are growing agriculture.
And together, we are growing Kenya.
Shiba, Utashiba, Fugo Calf Starter Pellets, Calf Grow Pencils, Heifer Grow, Dairy Milk Plus, and Maxi Milk Plus, products of Unga Farm Care.
Akishiba, Utashiba, Utashiba.
Profite na ng'ombe wako.
You don't need to be a pro kwa game ya pool. That's why inaitwa crack it. You just crack it.
Yemana sisi yao, mbusi, lion, crack it.
Usi crack it? Crack it.
Ndio form ya leo. Inajua ni kubaba. Hakuna mambo ingine ila kubaba.
To what it ought to be. Because this country has a huge, for the information of those who may not know, we have the best human resource perhaps in Africa, if not in the rest of the world. A human resource that has been well trained, with the necessary certification, despite whatever people talk about various problems. Ignore some of these people who get university degrees without going to any institution of higher learning. There are many Kenyans, whether they have diploma or certificate or degrees, who really merit that particular position. And that's why when Kenyans get out of this country, they do well because they have the requisite capacity and the focus to do what is right. So my prayer is that Kenyans also should also accept that they ought to get also to their Damascus moment, where they don't say we are supporting so-and-so because he's one of our own.
Yeah. This is the thing that, sometimes I feel that there is a struggle inside. And as we try to break from it, that there's so many things that are happening at the same time, Waziri. There's a development agenda that must be met. There is the subjective, softer side of things where there is the expectation that leadership will do what it's meant to do, as well as the people be involved and part of this whole thing, because we are here sitting and thinking that leadership is here and the people are here and that you need to do what you need to do so you keep us all together, without realizing that it is everybody together. But then also the spaces need to be created and protected by leadership to ensure that the people are involved in processes. But we seem to be caught up in this circus of who will then be at the position of power. And I think that is what robs away from the very character of governance. It strips it of its character. And that's what I keep asking myself, and I'm tormented because I say, when will we get to the point where we realize that it's everybody coming together, choosing right leadership, keeping them accountable, us also operating in the proper spaces? That is what is going to move a country forward, not these games that we see. Not somebody on one party today, on another party tomorrow. Not somebody saying, give me a stab at it, and if I don't get it, then I might as well join you. Because that's what we've seen easily for the last 20 years. When are we going to get to the point where we say it is moving forward that is most important? And grab onto that and go with it, because we seem to be just running around in futility without that north in sight.
Well, it's important that, yes, while I do not have the benefit of being a lawyer, but I made sure that the 2010 Constitution is a permanent feature in my car. And whenever I forget in the car, there is another one in the house. And the 2010 Constitution is so robust in ensuring that the things we talk about, if you are to have some fidelity to the 2010 Constitution, some of the issues that we are talking about do not arise. Why am I saying so? It gives almost a prescription to every decision that is taken in this country. And if we are to comply with that Constitution, we'll be able to respect human rights, we'll be able to respect institutions, because it is clear that the institutions, even the institution of society, is present in that Constitution by saying that there should be public participation in any decision taken at any stage. And that public participation must be informed public participation. Not a matter of just calling villagers and telling them this is what we've decided, how do you find it? It is informed by giving them the pros and cons. Otherwise, public participation is not complete without taking them through the process of informing them, so that when they decide yes or no, you will have informed them. And that same Constitution gives us a chance to create separation of powers. Apart from judiciary, executive, and legislature, there are also constitutional offices, including the Electoral Commission, Judicial Service Commission, Land Commission, and other commissions created by the same Constitution. If we give respect to that, and we ensure that whoever is elected as president is reminded, you are swearing under this Constitution, and this Constitution must be respected, and anything that is going to abrogate the Constitution is null and void from the beginning of that pronunciation. But what are we doing? In the name of supporting the current president, we have allowed him to engage in excess bad manners to the extent that even something that is unconstitutional is allowed. So that is taken to court, and the court quite a number of times have annulled the position that had been taken by the judiciary, by the executive, at the expense of society. Look at some of the cases even still in court about impeachment of the former deputy president. The court process has annulled some of those positions. Without commenting into details of what the process is, we realize there are many decisions taken by the executive that were reversed by a court of law. What is the problem? The due process was not followed, because the government, the way I know it, almost in every government ministry, there is a legal officer or somebody who comes from the office of the Attorney General to assist the ministry to realign its issues within the law. And if the minister is not convinced by that legal officer in his ministry, he refers any matter to the office of the Attorney General. And in the office of the Attorney General, there are enough officers to inform any ministry. Unless somebody is sleeping on the job, there should be no problem about decisions taken by the government.
Oh, but come on, we've seen, I think there's too many an example where we have seen that the law would make very clear what its position is and how we ought to follow it. And there are other parties who view this as a pure or mere suggestion. It's put out there, whether you choose to grab onto it or not, is really up to you. And we have allowed this to happen over and over and over again. And somehow we imagine that things should happen. And I was looking at some of the comments that folks are making that's been really, really spirited on our socials today. But one comment strikes me and says, you know what? If we were to follow the rule of law, period, we wouldn't have an issue. If we were to follow, and I'm just going to even call that out, and that is, I can't find it, but it's gone somewhere here. If we were just to follow the rule of law, we would not have any issue. Yeah. And across board, whether it was from a leadership point of view, whether it was from a citizen point of view, whether it was you in your home, you at your workplace, you in your government position, you as member of parliament, you as MCA, you as senator, you as governor, you as president. If you were to follow the rule of law in everything that we did, holding the Constitution as the one guard, half of the things that we see today we would not have problems with. Whether you are arrested or the arrestor, whether you are the lawmaker or the lawkeeper or the law follower. If we were to keep that front and center of everything that we did, I reckon that a lot of the issues that we see today we wouldn't. And I don't know what your thoughts are about that.
Well, I entirely agree with that particular statement, and I subscribe to it. And the only way we can do it is for us to have the courage to say no when you are required to say no. Otherwise, you run the risk of trying to be nice to individuals because you are seated in the same coalition. And also the public, and I can share you with you, because the public at times, they say, Kirwa is always in the opposition. I'm not in the opposition by choice. I'm in the opposition because I strongly believe that God gave me the opportunity to serve the people of Cherangani for 20 years, and it's a privilege. And therefore, if I was to do anything less than saying no when I'm required to say no, then I will be compromising the opportunity that God gave me to serve the people of Cherangani and make a name in this country. Who knew Kirwa before I became an MP? But because that space I've occupied for those 20 years, I say I must respect that space, not because of future benefits, but because I'm paying back to society what they gave to me for that particular period.
There's something you mentioned about institutions that should just be left to work. And if you look at even the current formation of parliament that we have right now, problems started immediately the government was formed. And what people, many have said that the president overtook parliament, but one would say it is parliament that ceded its power because it is an independent institution, simply because the president has said so. Therefore,
the law says so. The Constitution says so.
Yeah. So here we are in terms of even ensuring that public participation takes place. It is just another box to be ticked, And even as we speak in terms of dissent and how it is, we see that even some of leaders from your coalition as we speak right now, dissent is seen as though it is a crime and people have to apologize. People have to come and go back to their communities and apologize. When will we sit down and agree that dissent is acceptable, and even those who are dissenting, we are able to sit and find solutions to problems that we have?
Well, democracy is work in progress. Remember, our democracy is about 62 years old. And it has taken different forms from multi-party to one-party state, until we also made it de facto one-party, at some stage, de jure one-party stage, until the other day, about 20 years ago or more, that you are able to change over from now a new democratic dispensation. So this work in progress, and there are some people who, because they have lived through these political bad manners, they have not been able to acquit themselves of bad manners, even including some people in my coalition. But we hope we'll be calling upon them to be able to change and realize that you are just an element or an actor in a play. And when your period of acting is over, the curtains fall, and you move to the backstage. And it is not it is just a privilege to be a leader or to be even an opinion shaper, because there are many people who are much more intelligent than I am, who are much more educated than I am, who are much more informed and more versatile that I can ever be. But when I get this privilege, I must also use it responsibly. This is something I hope will be able to ingrain in the mind of those who will be with us. And when we realize they are not behaving as we ought But also, the most important thing is also society. We've given privilege to politicians to the extent that they look like they are demigods. We must be able to tell them, we support you, but here you have exceeded the limit. Whether it is anybody in my coalition or even on the other coalition.
Who is to tell them that they would listen? Who do you think?
The public must say no. You realize the GNCs, Ruto was almost running out of town. That's why he had to look for Raila. Because he realized the country was moving away from him. If the invasion of parliament had been thought to be invasion of State House, those askaris would not have killed as many people as they would have gone to State House. But we thank God that kind of revolution never took place. Because for me, having gotten used to democracy for some time, whether it is perfect or not, I was worried. Should the president leave State House, who will occupy that vacuum? Who will be able to transit us? But then we must be vigilant. These politicians are also fickle. They are human beings. They run for software options, what I usually call them lazy options. Otherwise, we must be very firm. If we realize it is not Dennis who qualifies to be the best person, to be the champion of our coalition, then we must change. But we hope the communities also accept, because for the last 62 years or so, we've been voting according to the tribe. There is no vote that has never taken that trajectory. Perhaps the 2002 Kibaki Tosha allowed Kenyans to come together. But it was so temporary. Within 2 years, we had already gone tribal way. Because by the time we are doing referendum, it was 41 against 42, 41 against 1. That's how the referendum was lost by the government in 2005. And in 2007 was the climax of ethnic politics. Even in so many FM stations, they were talking ethnic, talking about all those who are not supporting us. They are married from the same community that is fighting us. You know, when you get to that level, then you realize the country has degenerated. I'm not perfect, but at least I've been swimming above the waters. And that's why they say I don't support people from my community. I don't support you just because you talk the same language in vernacular that I talk. Whatever I've gotten, it has been the support of others, not necessarily from my community.
Waziri,
Yes.
just a quick one. There was a season in our politics where, you know, people were saying enough is enough. We're done with these old people. We need to kick them out. We need fresh blood, meaning we need young people to occupy legislative positions in cabinet and so on and so forth. I'm looking at the average age of President Ruto's cabinet, and it's 55 years. The average age of MPs currently is 48 years. In the Senate, it's 50 years. You look at the age distribution and the blend of youthful energy and seasoned professional experience in the national leadership. And the disappointment here is you look at even the debates in Parliament among this age distribution, and we are now all of a sudden going back and saying we miss the old days when we had these old people having very healthy debates in Parliament because it's become a circus. What do you, in your opinion, see as the next theme? Because there's always in every political season and every election cycle, there's always a theme. What do you see as the next theme?
Well, apart from the rallying call that I don't want to mention because I respect your station, the most important thing is for us to promote integrity and moral probity. When you see a member of parliament going for a fake university education, I'm not saying everybody must have a degree in a country, but when you see a member of parliament going for a fake university certificate and in a fake institution, then that is the lowest moral bar that we have laid for ourselves. When you see individuals going to certain universities and also Kenyans elect them knowing that they don't have the requisite university education, and I think we have about 6 governors today.